I'm joined by Councilwoman Theresa Morris, who's one of our newer council people, but is a fierce advocate for Toledo in general, but her district in particular. And we're standing in her council district, which had been my council district. Many moons ago when I was on city council, I also represented Council District 6. But more than that, this is where I grew up. This was my neighborhood. This still is my parents' neighborhood. My mom and dad still live in the same house that I grew up in over on Capistrano, just right over our shoulder here. Before he joined Chief Kral and became a Toledo police officer, my dad worked at a place right up Telegraph Road here called Bingham Stamping. Now's probably not the time to talk about how many nights I went to Raceway Park with my grandpa. And I was telling Councilwoman Morris on the phone that probably every Saturday from the age of maybe 9 years old to 15, I was in this parking lot on my bowling team. However, when I was doing that, when my dad was working down the road and when we were growing up here, there wasn't an establishment like the one that we're standing in front of at 5205 Telegraph. Places like this, it didn't exist. And we sure as heck didn't have the sort of events that took place over the weekend. In addition to Councilwoman Morris, we're also joined by a number of city officials, police, fire, the law department, and code enforcement. And we want to talk about not only what's happening here today, but bigger picture. We want to shine light on what we are doing to crack down on after-hours establishments. And we're going to draw the distinction between bars, legally licensed bars and taverns, many of which have been problems, and some of them have been closed down and boarded up, too. But our focus right now for this conversation is on after-hours establishments, which are different from taverns in that they are totally off the books. They don't have permits. They haven't had inspections. They are illegal and unlawful in every way. And we want to talk about what we have done and what we are doing to make sure that places like this don't exist. The gentlemen to your right, my left, are led by Mr. Pena, is that correct, and his son, who they are a city contractor who helps, they work with the city when a property has to be boarded up. And so just logistically, if I can talk about what we have behind us here. Yesterday, we went into the housing court and got an order to padlock this after-hour establishment. It was padlocked yesterday, I believe, late afternoon, early evening. And today, Mr. Pena and his crew are going to board it up. So this establishment will be closed. We have, there have been a handful of these after-hour establishments that our team has identified and has done the same thing with. Got an order from housing court, padlocked it, boarded up. Handful of them, and they all represent in some ways, well, in real ways, success stories, because they are an example of our team doing the grassroots work to identify a problem before it happens and to close them, and we have. I think about 3 or 4 so far this year, and that's because of the excellent work of the folks behind us. But we already know that there's about a half a dozen or so other after-hour establishments, and this is the list of their address, and at least according to Aries, who owns them. We know these to be after-hour establishments because of the work of Vice, the work of fire department, code inspection, the law department, and actually citizens. Citizens will call and report on them, and they're easy to spot because under no circumstance should you have 100 people jamming into someone's basement or 150 people, squeezing into a place without permits like the one behind us. So we know where you are. And as we have already done this year, we are prepared to throw the entire weight of the city of Toledo at you to take away your property and to do that in the name of public safety. Now, there are property rights in this country, in this state, and they are well protected. But those rights do not extend to the sort of unlawful activities that happen here, without permits, without permission, without fire inspections, health inspections. Totally unacceptable, and that's why we've worked so hard and have succeeded in closing these places down. And today we are gathered again to do it. If you own one of these establishments, if one of your names is there, we know who you are. We know where your establishment is, and we are ready to throw the weight of the city behind you, at you, to take your property. If you live near one of these establishments, help us be eyes and ears on the street. Let us know if people start gathering. Let us know in real time. Obviously, you can call 911, call Engage Toledo. There's a number of different ways to let us know, and we will come in. Our teams will come in as an after hour is occurring, and begin the process of doing what you see here today. There's a difference between a lawfully permitted and regulated tavern and places like this, which we have no tolerance for, and I think what we're doing today is a demonstration of how little we're going to tolerate this. I'm going to ask the chiefs and our code enforcement folks, and maybe even John Madigan from the law department, who actually was the one who went in to housing court and got the judge to sign the order, to talk a little bit about how the process works, how they operate, how we can attack this problem, how we can close them down. But before I do that, I would like to turn it over to the councilwoman who represents this part of Toledo, Theresa Morris.
Good morning. Thank you for covering this important topic. I am Theresa Morris, and I was appointed to the City Council in April. In District 6 alone, I have found several after-hours bars that were operating illegally. This place was one of them. They had no occupancy permit, no liquor permit, and had performed construction without permits. The Toledo Fire Department and the Toledo Police SWAT team entered the building and seized items. The building was ordered to shut down. So what happened? The operator continued to operate without any regard for city or state laws, and this needs to stop. We know these clubs only breed illegal activity. We're talking drugs, we're talking sexual trafficking, and murders. Now there's a 41-year-old woman's family who mourns her death at the hands of a greedy and unprincipled operator. The city needs to enforce the laws that are already on the books so we can continue to not whack-a-mole these operations from going from one area to another. This needs to stop. It only drains our city resources, including police and fire. The taxpayers are tired of paying for the responses of these illegal clubs. This needs to stop. The city needs to have better enforcement tools against these unsavory agents operating in our city. We live here. We care about our city, and we will not watch it turn into the wild, wild west. We are a city of laws, and we need to enforce these laws that are already on the books. Apparently he agrees too. The city needs to stop. It needs to stop these unsavory characters who snub their nose at the city. We are looking at every angle to clean up this city. The city will not be a dumping ground for those outside investors who want to ruin our city. It's going to stop. Thank you.
I will be very brief. I get a lot of questions. If you know that these are after-hours bars, why aren't they closed down right now? Well, if they opened every night, it would be much easier, but they'll maybe open once every 3 weeks, and they'll move to different locations. This list is not all exhaustive either. I'm sure there are more out there, but the challenge for us is it opens on a Thursday, and then we don't see anybody there for another month, and then it opens on a Friday. So our field operations crews know where the after hours are, and they keep an eye on them. But like the mayor alluded to earlier, this is where we need our citizens to be our eyes and ears. We can't be everywhere at the same time, but once we know that either a place is up and going, we can reach out to our friends at the Ohio State Highway Patrol and the Ohio Investigative Unit and try to get in there and start an investigation, and then bring in the rest of the city to help us out closing these down. Safety-wise, obviously, we hear the tragedies, but these after-hours locations, especially the residents that are in the neighborhoods, there's no code at all. There's no code enforcement at all. There's no fire suppression. They're just dangerous havens for, let alone guns and drugs, but for a fire or something else that could happen. So we need the citizens to help us out and give us a heads up whenever they see anything going on in their neighborhoods.
Some people may wonder what the fire department has to do with something like this. Well, the answer simply is we can get access when there are permitting or occupancy issues, when we are notified or have reason to suspect that there are things going on inside the building related to code enforcement, activities or processes going on inside the building, including things related to liquor control. So we can get access. We then assist TPD with getting inside and then following through with these processes. So that's what fire does. That's how we're involved in it. And, you know, our people are out there responding to the unfortunate consequences of the activities that occur in these places. And to echo what everyone else has said, and the Councilwoman, this needs to stop. It needs to stop. And we're going to be working to do that. So thank you.
Just to pick up on some of the comments that Councilwoman Morris and the mayor had said, internally, the Code Enforcement Division, along with our partners at Toledo Police and the Fire Department, our Law Department, we actually operate a group internally called the Code Enforcement Response Team. It's called the CERT program. And the CERT program actually reviews these after-hours clubs and these properties that are illegal in our community once a quarter. And we go through them, we talk about our plan of action on how we can curb this activity, how we can protect our neighborhoods, because these places have a direct impact on the quality of life for our citizens. You know, violent crime breeds at places like this. As they mentioned, there's no permitting, there's no inspections. These places operate on fly-by-night, on a whim, and we need to take a stand as a city, as our residents and also the officials here, that we're no longer going to tolerate this in our neighborhoods. So we appreciate you coming and paying attention to this problem as we try to solve these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. John Madigan from the Law Department. First, I'd like to thank the judges of the Toledo Municipal Court, especially Judge Howe over the years, who's helped us in stopping this problem from going on. What we do with these types of bars and after-hours places is file a civil action called an injunction. It's an action which keeps the bar closed for a period of time, sometimes up to a year, or the after-hours place closed because of what's been going on. It's more of a preventative step, and it works better than the after the fact arrest of maybe one or two people at a location for a problem. Next week the problem continues again with a different crowd. So this actually is a way of keeping these places under control, keeping them closed, and keeping people safe. It isn't the kind of case we file on a whim. We don't file on cases where there's just like litter in the parking lot or noise. Usually it takes something serious that happens there before we bring this to court. But when we do, we usually get good results from the court, and I again thank them for their cooperation.
All right. Well, in conclusion, and not to repeat what's already been said, I guess if there's one thing a final thing I want to emphasize about this list, and Chief's right, this list, depending on how you define it, could grow. But one of the things to point out is that many of these are in neighborhoods. I mean, embedded right in a neighborhood. These, Monroe. Okay, Monroe is a large location, but Magnolia and Elm and Hamilton. That's a neighborhood with homes on all sides. And look, this is a problem no matter where it happens. But especially in neighborhoods, we can't accept it. And folks, here's the bottom line: they're just not safe. You should not go into any of these locations. They're not permitted. They haven't been inspected by fire, and we know everyone up. We know about these places. We're prepared to close them down, and we have our eye on you. But my hope is that today, through the attention that this news conference will get, we can have extra eyes on the ground in the form of citizens helping us keep an eye on locations like this or others that we might not know about, so we can bring the full force of the City of Toledo's legal apparatus to bear on this problem. So I know Mr. Pena and his team want to get to work. I don't know if there's any questions in general, if we should just do one-on-ones.
In this particular place, the basis for being closed is the fact that they have not complied with the building rules and regulations for their construction. So we can keep this closed until they comply, until they prove to the court that they've done everything that we require them to do. In the cases of a lot of after-hours places, we use what we call our padlock ordinance, and we can keep those places closed for a year. They can be fined if they continue to operate in violation of the court order. They can also be held in contempt of court and put in jail if they violate the order. So there's some serious consequences.
Well, I think from what happened this weekend, we can see that there's gun violence associated with these locations. That's why it's so important that, especially the locations that are in the neighborhoods, that we know about them. Sadly, when alcohol is drank at excessive amounts and there's guns on scene, really bad things happen. So that's our mission, is to keep everybody safe and go to legal places, enjoy your time, and leave your guns at home. We need the citizens to report these to us. We can't find them all. That's why we need them to be on our radar to start with. So that's why I'm making such a request to Toledoans to help us out. That's just an FYI. We're still doing ongoing investigations on these. It is. I mean, I think Councilwoman Morris said, it's like whack-a-mole. You hit one down, and another one pops up in another part of town. I don't mean to minimize it by referring to it to a kids' game, but it's really challenging when we have a city this size to keep an eye and find where all these are. Well, I can't change anybody's mindset on what they want to do, but it's our job to make it more difficult for them to find illegal places to go continue drinking.
Let me just add one thing to that. After hours have existed for a while, but we have noticed that in the last year and a half or so, with COVID, that they have become there seems to be a spike in their popularity, as it were. When there were distancing requirements and masking requirements, and bars and taverns and restaurants were forced under state regulations to be closed, we didn't have as many problems with bars. But we started noticing more problems with after hours. By definition, these places don't care about state regulations. They don't care about masking requirements or social distancing. These things are totally off the books and illegal. So COVID has played an interesting role here. We've seen less sort of complaints and issues at taverns, lawful taverns, not across the board. Of course, we have some problems there too. But there, as bars and taverns and restaurants became difficult, if not impossible, to congregate in during COVID, people began to look for other ways to gather, where the desire to follow the law was not as strong. So, all right. Well, hey, thank you, everyone, and now Mr. Pena can take over, and his gang can do its work. All right. Thank you.